Hi everybody, I'm Dustin Benzel and welcome to another Pokemon discussion. Today we're going to start off with my 3rd gen reflections of 3rd generation. I don't know how many parts it's going to be, but I'm going to try to discuss all that I can, and I promise I'll try not to ramble. Not going to give you any guarantees, but I will try not to ramble. I will try to make it concise and to the point. I'm not sure if you like that, because I kind of like the detailed fluff ramblings that I do, because there is a point to it, but like I said, I will try to keep everything to the point. So let's just jump in. Now, how would I rate the 3rd generation? Well, excluding 6th generation, which probably still has a couple of years to go before I can decide how I like it, I would have to say 3rd generation is my 2nd favorite. And it's because 3rd generation introduced better quality writing for a lot of aspects of the show. Now, I realize that there are some funky moments. There are like the thunder armor, and in some ways that makes sense and at the same time doesn't make any sense. But we'll get to that when we get there. Okay, so I know I completely forgot about Iris and Silene in my 5th gen reflection. And so then in 4th gen I talked about May and Brock. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to start off with Max, May, and Brock, and then I will jump into Ash. So let's discuss May, since she was introduced relatively first within the series, before Max and Brock showed up. Brock didn't show up until Max and May already were traveling with Ash. So let's talk about May. May is a character, and I'm kind of neutral towards her. Even though I could say that I didn't exactly like Iris, or I disliked Iris, and so I would probably say that Iris is my least favorite of the female companions. I'm kind of neutral towards May. You know, May was her own character. She was definitely different from Misty, which is a difference and change, you know, from the previous generations of 1st and 2nd, where Misty, Brock traveled with Ash. So there was that, and so May was definitely different than Misty, but May did come off kind of like airheaded. You know, there's a whole aspect of she didn't like Pokemon in the beginning until she warmed up to them, and if I remember correctly, she didn't exactly quite enjoy having to travel to Professor Birch's laboratory just to get a Pokemon. You know, because she didn't like it, and she had to deal with like Mudkip and Trico, and she didn't really care for them at all. Mudkip sprayed her in the face, you know. So May didn't exactly start off liking Pokemon, but she definitely warmed up to it. And she was gonna try to do gym battles like Ash, but then the whole contest thing introduced as a result of contests being within the games, introduced in 3rd generation. So there's that whole aspect of contests being for May. So May decided to become a coordinator, and I neglected to say that she chose Torchic as her starter. And then she just went through. She caught a Wurmple, she caught a Skitty, she caught a Munchlax, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Eevee, all those Pokemon. And then when she was reintroduced in the 4th generation in her cameo, what she had was basically Blaziken, Munchlax, Skitty, Beautifly, Venusaur, and Glaceon, and I believe that's it. She only had a few. Skitty and Beautifly were there, so then she dropped Bulbasaur off. She took Squirtle and Eevee. Oh, and she also had Wartortle in the 2nd generation, or the 4th generation, when she was reintroduced in the Wallace Cup with Zoe and Dawn. So there is that. Let's briefly address, May did fairly mediocre in the contest. I think she got like maybe top 8 in the Hoenn Grand Festival, and I believe she got top 4 in the Kanto Grand Festival, but I'm not entirely sure on that. But it would make sense if I'm not mistaken. So, at this particular point, in comparison to Dawn, May's contests weren't exactly all that exciting. I'm not going to go into whether or not May did okay or not, but it wasn't until Super Contest with Dawn that contests really started to branch out into their own specific way. So May basically only had basic appeals and of that nature in regards to contests. You know, it would be basically throwing a frisbee at Beautifly, and Beautifly would probably use string shot and do something amazing or appealing in that fashion. That's not what happened, but I'm just saying it wasn't until Dawn that they started focus on move appeals more than just physical characteristics of the just playing with your Pokemon, basically. Third generation appeals were mostly about just, you know, playing with your Pokemon, pretty much, while the fourth generation contests were about, you know, really showing off your Pokemon moves in a beautiful way. So it was nice that May actually introduced the concept of the girl companions actually having some sort of trinket collecting goal, and I really like that, because the thing with Misty as well as Iris is they didn't exactly do very much in regards to that. So I like how May introduced the concept of girls or the girl companions having goals similar to Ash, but just in different ways, because it actually gives them more substance. Because just with just Brock and Misty in the first 2 generations, it was just about Ash, but with the inclusion of May and her story arc, it actually added a lot more development within the series, so it just wasn't about Ash. Now, Ash is my favorite character, and I don't mind if a series is all about him, but, you know, there are probably a lot more story arcs and storylines that can be made if it wasn't just about Ash, because if it's just about Ash, the writers and the producers, especially in the second gen, probably have to deal with a lot of filler episodes, you know, with like second generation, it was just filled with fillers, and I'll get to that in my reflections of second generation. So yeah, May was pretty nice. She was a pretty average character introduced, but the thing that May stands out more than all the girls is that she introduced a storyline that could fluff out the third generation, so it just wasn't about Ash collecting his badges and stuff. So that was really nice. So it was nice to see that May set up that precedent for future generations, so that it just wouldn't just be about Ash or whatever. So let's talk about Max a little bit. In comparison to Bonnie, I would definitely have to say that Bonnie is better than Max. Bonnie is just adorable. I don't know if it was a bad dubbing choice, because when I watched third generation, it was already being dubbed. And at that particular time, it was 4Kids that dubbed the Hoenn generation, and they didn't exactly have the big gap, and there was a year. So I don't know May and Max's Japanese voices at all. They're Japanese voice actors or actresses very well, except May was reintroduced in fourth generation, so I heard May's Japanese voice actress then, but I really don't know a lot about it. I don't remember what it sounded like. And I definitely didn't hear Misty's. Brock, yes, but that's only because Brock was all over fourth generation. Hold on. Okay. So, yeah, I don't know if it was because they gave him a really horrible little kid annoying voice in the dub, but I didn't exactly like Max all that. I mean, I'm not like some of the people out there who absolutely loathe Max, but, you know, I mean, I do agree that Max did bring a special dynamic to the group, because when it was just Misty, Brock, and Ash, it felt like maybe there was something missing. Misty. There was something misty about that group. No, there was something missing about the group, and then just going with like Brock, Dawn, and Ash, and even though that had more of a, I don't know, a deeper connection with Dawn and Ash and Brock, there was that was a little vague, I guess, or however you want to put it, bland maybe, I don't know. But so yeah, the whole 4-person group, especially with siblings, kind of enhanced the group dynamic a little bit. I mean, Max could have was annoying and all of that, but you know, he at least added a little bit more to the group dynamic, so it wasn't just May, Brock, and Ash. And maybe some of you out there might agree that it would just been better if it was just them. But personally, I feel like even if Max was annoying for the most part, he did have that particular added dynamic to the group, you know. Like I said, Bonnie is a lot better, but that's Bonnie and that's 6th generation. So, well, there is one nice thing that I think most fans can agree on in regards to Max. And that's definitely the Ralts episode. And I think the dub name for it was Do I Hear a Ralts, or Do You Hear Ralts, or whatever. And it was definitely a Max heavy related episode. And it also involved Ash's Snowrun, and I think a lot of fans out there can agree that that particular episode in regards to Max was really well done. It actually didn't make Max being the annoying, stupid know-it-all that he was most of the time. There was actually a lot of emotional aspects to that episode, and it was really one of the better, well-done episodes within the 3rd generation. So there was that, you know, but for the most part, Max was kind of annoying, especially the whole aspect of Ash beating Max and May's father, Norman, for the 5th gym, whatever, and then Max stole the badge and hid and cried and was a whiny little brat because he looked up to his father a little too much. And the thing is that Max has been traveling with Ash and May for a long time. Max should at least by now understand that people lose, and I realized that Norman was Max's idol and hero, and Max just looked up to his father, but it was kind of annoying to see that, you know, because it just showed how annoying Max can really be. You know, I'm just thinking of 6th gen, and I might address this before the gym battle between Ash and Clement in 6th gen, but I'm just thinking of Bonnie, and I feel like Bonnie is a little bit more mature in that regard. So that's a downside to Max, is that he was like really annoying, you know, and you know, I guess it was just some weird personality that didn't quite work for Max, the know-it-all but kind of stupid little brother of May, I guess, who was just really annoying. But that's just that. So we'll move on to Brock. Let's see. Max wasn't allowed to have any Pokemon, so let's discuss Brock. Now, if I understand correctly, Brock actually brought Fortress back. Because if I remember correctly, in the Tailo episode where Brock was reintroduced when Ash caught Tailo, Brock used Fortress's explosion or self-destruct to make sure all those Tailo went away, and that's when he introduced. And then during the series, Brock caught a Mudkip and a Lotad. Now, May had lots of development within the 3rd generation, but Brock really didn't have anything. Sure, there was the whole aspect of Lotad fully evolving, but then when Battle Frontier happened, he left Ludicolo at his home, I guess, with his mother and father, and his mother was a water type trainer. And sorry about that, I had to check something. Okay, so yeah, Brock had his Lotad fully evolved. Mudkip really didn't get any very much, and that was the introduction of the concept of Ash not getting all of the starters. And in a lot of cases that makes sense, because I'm not really sure how Ash would use Mudkip, necessarily. I would have expected that Mudkip would have been a little bit treated better if it was with Ash, but I'm just thinking, even though Ash and Mudkip would have been fine, I feel like it made sense at that particular time just to spread out the starters. I mean, maybe they should have done a little bit more with Brock, but Brock didn't really have any goals, kind of like how Silent and Clement for a little bit don't exactly have much goals that they can work on. All they can do is get focused episodes, and that's pretty much it, because they don't have a trinket related quest, and that's probably the only way that a character within the show can get a lot of development, or a lot of required development, because right now the only development at this particular time that Brock and Silent and all the other male companions could have ever gotten was just if it was like forced development, because we haven't done anything. So there was that whole aspect of Mudkip didn't exactly do very much, and it was a little disappointing to see that actually happening. So there's that. And within the Battle Frontier, that's when Mudkip actually evolved into Marshtomp. I don't know quite if Brock got rid of Fortress at that time, but I don't think so. I think it was only Ludicolo, because that would mean that I'm pretty sure that Brock still had Fortress within the Battle Frontier. And during the Battle Frontier is when he caught Bonsly, and that was when he dumped everything else. And then he took Bonsly to 4th generation, and we saw Bonsly evolving into Sudowoodo, and we also saw him capturing all those Pokemon in 4th generation, and I think I've already addressed this. Maybe not quite much detail, but, I think I addressed it of the Pokemon that I got. So, Brock really didn't have very much to do. I do like how within the Battle Frontier series, however, that Brock actually entered a contest, and that's very similar to the 4th generation, where Brock actually introduced the tag battle with, like, it had Dawn, Conway, and Paul and Ash, within the 4th generation. So I kind of like that. I like when the characters actually get to do things within the actual series when they usually don't. And there were a lot of times where Brock could have entered certain aspects of the series, of the tournaments and stuff, but he didn't quite do that. I mean, Silent entered a lot more tournaments, and while 6th Gen doesn't exactly have any extraneous tournaments, there's still that. Okay. So, let's just jump right into Ash. Now, thing about 3rd generation is it really, really did set up a precedence in regards to Ash training his Pokemon, and that was really nice. I mean, there is some aspects within the 2nd generation where Ash did train his Pokemon, but there was more aspects of training within the 3rd generation that makes 3rd generation stand out. But before we quite get into that, let's just discuss Ash's captures in the order that they were caught. We'll hold off Battle Frontier for now until we get to the league, and then we'll discuss the Battle Frontier. So Ash brought his Pikachu. And then his first Pokemon was Tailo, then he caught a Trico, and then he caught a Corphish, and then a Torkoal, and then a Snorunt, and that's all he had. Now, I will say there is one disappointing aspect of 3rd generation. 5th generation, what are we talking about now? There is one aspect that I didn't like about 3rd generation, and that is that Ash's captures were way too spaced out. Now, I realized that Torkoal was caught between the 4th and 5th gyms, and that was Ash's 4th Pokemon, and that's kind of fine. But the problem is he didn't get his final Pokemon, Snorunt, until right before the 7th gym. And the reason why I call foul on that is Snorunt was Ash's last Pokemon. Sure, within the Battle Frontier, he did catch Apom and brought Phanpy with him to evolve into Donphan, but we'll get to that in a moment. But the thing about the 3rd generation pre-League, not the filler saga with the Battle Frontier, but pre-League, is that Ash only caught 5 Hoenn Pokemon, and that's really disappointing because you would think that Ash would probably get a little bit more, at least one more Pokemon within the series. So there was that aspect, and I'm not saying that it was all bad. I mean, I would say definitely that his 3rd generation Pokemon are definitely stronger than, say, a 2nd generation Pokemon and his 1st generation pre-League, as well as his, for the most part, maybe his 5th generation. Probably would have to wait until Ash had Donphan and Sceptile with Advent in the Battle Frontier, but there's that. So let's just discuss the gyms real quick. Let's see, the first gym leader was against Roxanne, and that was at a time where Pikachu was just learning Iron Tail, because the one thing about the previous generations is that they had a lot of rock ground Pokemon, and rock ground Pokemon are completely immune or resistant to Pikachu's attacks. So it was really nice that they really focused on Pikachu learning Iron Tail. Now, there may be better moves that Pikachu can learn that isn't Iron Tail. I think it can learn Brick Break. I'm not sure. And that would be a much better attack, because fighting types will always be a much better move to use than steel types. Well, at least technically, because then there's the rock, steel, and ice aspect that steel types don't quite cover, but then there's the whole fairy types in 6th generation. So it's a little balances out maybe in 6th generation with the inclusion of fairy types, but back then a fighting type move would have definitely benefited Pikachu more so than Iron Tail. But Iron Tail made sense at the time, because probably the most common weakness to steel types that most people focus on is probably rock types. I believe there is the ice types, and let's see, is there anything else? No, I think steel types are only super effective against rock and ice, I believe, at least prior to 6th gen. So that Roxanne was the introduction to Iron Tail Pikachu. The thing about Trico, though, at the time was that Trico didn't actually have any grass type moves, and it didn't learn any grass type moves up until it learned Bullet Seed, which I have to think is a little weird, because Trico learned Bullet Seed within the dub season that it actually evolved, if I'm not mistaken, or at least I'm not sure when that Bullet Seed episode occurred. 3rd generation was a little bit weird. When I remembered it, it was like what. It was probably in 2003 probably when that came out, and I was still in high school at that time, so it's kind of hard to remember exactly what happened, but it was either the season within or the season right after, and I think either the Bullet Seed episode was 52 or something like that, and it was the first episode of the 2nd season of the 3rd generation dub, or it was the last episode. But regardless, it was within that time that there was a short 16 episode or 20 episode gap between that episode and the time that Trico evolved into Grovyle. And what makes that weird is that when Trico evolved into Grovyle, that's when it also learned Leaf Blade. So it was kind of weird that Trico only had Bullet Seed through its own whole time as a Pokemon, as a grass Pokemon, and I think that's weird, because it definitely should have been a Pokemon move that Trico already had. Now, I don't know exactly what Trico had prior to this, but I think he only had Quick Attack, Pound, and Slam. possibly, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, those moves on a grass type are a little weird, and then I'm a little confused as to why it took like 50 episodes before Trico actually learned a grass type move. So that's why its inclusion within the Rock Gym was a little weird. I realized that it was Ash's best choice between it and Talo, you know, with Nose Pass and Geodude, but still, it's a little weird that in terms of gym, if I remember correctly, that Trico didn't learn a grass type move until either before Flannery or right after Flannery. I'm not really sure, but it was around that time. And there was all those. Then there was the gym with Roxanne and Brawly that Trico introduced, and it relied solely on non-grass type moves. So that's a little funky, especially now when every Pokemon of that particular thing can go. So let's go with the second gym. Second gym was with Brawly, and the thing about Brawly is that for every single generation, for some reason, Ash always loses one gym. First generation, he lost to Brock. Second generation, he lost to Whitney. Third generation, he lost to Brawly. Fourth generation, he lost to Rourke. Fifth generation, he lost to Lenora. Sixth generation, he lost to Viola. So it's a little weird that Ash always loses one gym and has to do a rematch. But I guess that's because they don't want Ash winning all the time. But it would be kind of nice if for certain aspects of this... Oh, never mind. I'll get to that in a different discussion. Sorry, this is about third generation. So the thing about second generation is that Ash lost, and then he trained, and during that time he also caught a Corphish. Now the thing about the rematch with Brawly, and the reason why I think it's a little weird, is that Ash did not do very well against Brawly the first time, if I'm not mistaken. And the weird thing is, Ash actually had Talo, and Talo was a Pokemon that made sense to do very well against Brawly, but they preferred Trico. Now, I really want to call foul on that, because that was a very big trend in regards to Ash's basics bird Pokemon, at least starting with Talo, and it didn't end until Fletchling, where Ash's basic bird Pokemon don't get wins or don't get really much battles until after they evolve for the first time. Talo did not get a single win within its series, and I'm pretty sure Trico evolved before Talo, at least I'm pretty sure, because I'm pretty sure Talo didn't evolve into Swallow until before Winona, and possibly, it's a little hard to determine when, but it was definitely before Torchic evolved. I remember that. I know Talo evolved into Swallow before Torchic evolved into Combusken for me. So I remember that. So it is a little disappointing that Talo didn't really get very much until it evolved. There was the whole Pokeringer, but I'm not really sure if Talo directly knocked out any of his opponents. And I'm not really sure it would matter that much in that kind of format. But definitely it didn't happen until Talo evolved into Swallow that Swallow actually started doing things and winning. And so the thing about the second generation is during that rematch with when Ash used Corphish to battle against Brawly, is that Talo kind of got screwed over during that whole entire battle, so to speak, or whatever. So that really was pretty awful. So I guess we could talk about third gym because it's really quick. Now, I understand that people may have had problems with the third gym, the way that it was portrayed. But, you know, the thing is, that was kind of an epic way how it turned out, you know. I kind of like how it kind of resulted in some particular story development for Watson. You know, if you remember the episode, Watson had Raikou, or however you want to pronounce it. I don't know what it's technically pronounced as. We'll go with Raikou, since I think that's how it's technically pronounced. So the thing is, within the third gym, Pikachu and Ash and gang had to deal with Raikou, a robotic mechanical Raikou that Watson had developed, and then Pikachu used Iron Tail, and absorbed all that electricity, just enough that it wouldn't make Pikachu sick, but it was enough to supercharge Pikachu. And then Pikachu battled Watson, and I think it was in the beginning, first half of the episode, and Pikachu just totally took out Magneton. Just simply, I'm pretty sure possibly that Watson had another Pokemon, possibly. I think it was just another Magnemite or something like that. I'm not really sure, but I think he had more than two. But I'm not really sure. He could have just had two. I'm thinking that maybe he had only two, but I'll discuss that possibly in the other part of this particular reflection. So there was that, and even though it was a little disappointing to see Pikachu being supercharged and giving Ash that kind of badge out of cheapness, the good thing, it wasn't quite a pity badge like in first generation, but the thing about it is that it was really nice to see Watson reflecting on his loss in a kind of a big way, because it led to some important development for Watson. And usually we don't get very much character development for gym leaders, except Brock and Misty technically, and it's only because they were main characters. So there was that aspect of the whole entire series, of that particular part where Watson actually got development, where Watson was wondering if whether or not he is actually a good gym leader anymore, because he lost so quickly to Ash. And then it led to Watson being in New Mauville, which is the power plant city of Mauville, if you remember correctly, because there were some story plots within the game that you had to go to New Mauville or whatever, and it had and those were just within the gym. That's where Watson ran into Electrike, and then Electrike actually cheered Watson up and made Watson happy. And then, as it turned out, the reason why Ash's Pikachu did so well was because it was supercharged, because I think after the gym battle is when Pikachu may have gotten sick as a result of all that electricity. And then that's when everyone realized that the reason why Ash did so well was because Pikachu was supercharged with all that electricity as a result of the damage Pikachu did with the Raikou mechanical robots of Raikou. So that was really nice, even though it ended with Watson losing so horribly, and we didn't actually get a good, decent battle with Watson until they came back around, and Ash used Torkoal against Watson's main Electric, I believe, because I think Electric evolved at that particular point. So, yeah, I can understand that it was a little disappointing, but it was pretty great, I think, because it gave Watson a little bit more development. Watson was pretty much an old gym leader, and if I'm not mistaken, he was the oldest gym leader of all the gym leaders, even if you count the Juan and Wallace exchange as a result of Emerald. But yeah, I think it was because Watson was so old that it was really nice to see that, because we didn't exactly get that until, Maylene, but that was only because she was a new gym leader. And the thing with Watson is he was a gym leader for so long that maybe he was doubting his own skills or abilities. So that was a nice touch within the Watson episode. I guess if you can count the Torkoal versus Manectric future episode. So there was all of that to look at, and it was pretty nice. So this concludes the first part. The next part will finish off the gyms. I will discuss a little bit more about the Pokemon and their development. They didn't exactly do very much. You're going to see in second generation that talking about Ash's Pokemon is going to go by pretty quickly due to how that turned out. So I'll see you in part 2 I'm thinking that there may be 3 parts, but we'll see if I can't throw in Battle Frontier at the end of the next part. But we'll see what happens in the next video. I'm Dustin Benzel, as I've already said, so I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.